I'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the sheriff for roll call.
Tommy Johnson, third president.
Rick Warren.
Marissa Treat.
Joe Blau for Terry Blimmer.
Brian Mon.
Jerry Stone for Vic Freeman.
Miles Davidson.
Larry Stein.
Okay, let's see. Want to do our newest commissioner here for flag salute, Joe?
There's not one.
You want to do it anyway?
Sure. Ready? Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Beautifully done. Got the hang of it. All right, it was properly posted on September 8th. Is there a motion to approve our minutes of August 29th?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any?
The moment, I apologize. There was a.
Okay. Any individual consideration on the consent docket?
Mr. Warren, if you could vote on the minutes for me, please, sir.
Is there a motion for the consent docket?
Motion to approve consent.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Judge, which item are you here for?
Oh, there he is.
You want to go ahead and address those?
Well, the only thing that I want is, this is with regard to the construction of the courtrooms at the Juvenile Justice Center. And I know that there has been some discussion with regard to that. I know that most of you all are briefed on that. These courtrooms are necessary because we have had 2 new judges hired. Right now, our courthouse is full. One judge is in what we call 7.5, and that courtroom really can't be maintained in terms of a courtroom because it's not handicap accessible and ADA compliant with regard to the justice chambers. Now, I'm going to request 2 more judges this year from the legislature. I do believe that we'll get those judges. This is a part of a completed funding request from 2 years ago that the Chief Justice had requested, and the legislature only appropriated money for 2 specials. And I'm going to come back and say I need that other special in another district. So if the legislature does appropriate that money, and they did last year for Tulsa as well, so it seems that the legislature is in recognition of the fact that metropolitan areas are growing. And we have the heaviest docket in the state by far, about 40% heavier than Tulsa. So I don't want to fault my Tulsa colleagues, but we have the same number of judges as Tulsa does, but 40% heavier docket. So we are just at the point where I must, as the presiding, ask the Chief Justice to make that request for more judges. That being the case, that those JJC courtrooms, which I'll move the probate, guardianship, and adoption docket, 3 judges out there, will be necessary to make space for the additional judges that I hope to have money appropriated for from the legislature. And that funding usually begins and is in place by July 1st, and then we would start the selection process. With regard to a district judge, of course, that's different than a special, and that process would take a little bit longer, a few months. But we'd still be looking at somewhere around this time next year or a little bit later if we get that funding from the legislature, where we yet have 2 more judges. So I think it's at this point in time we're out of space, and the need for those courtrooms are there, and I just want to make that request of you all, and thank you all for your consideration of that request. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'd like to make the motion, move the $5,300,000 line item from the $18,892,110.32, to make the motion to move 5,300,000 for the juvenile courtrooms.
Cassie's asked for a second here, for a moment.
You want to make all that again, do you?
And you were doing that under which item?
It's item 37.
No,
Isn't that item, isn't the moving of the 5,300,000, isn't that item 37?
I'm looking back at what item number we, 36 is on the board right now, but what, I am a little confused which one we're on, because I know we said 34, 36, and 39, so I don't know exactly which one.
I think the money's coming out of item 37 though.
So, Cody,
That's a full vote.
the motion that Mr. Warren has put forth, is that, what'd you,
5,300,000.
is that, included in the recommendation that you're going to discuss?
Yes, it is. I was just being clear that item 37 is just the recommendation that BET will give. 38 is the action that you guys will take based on these new revenue projections.
And-
So if you want to approve this now, you'll need to do that.
And we didn't have to necessarily go now. I was just in deference to the presiding judge's time, wanting to get his comments. But if you want to go back to the order, we can. I just knew.
Cody,
Well, just to be clear with
it's
the
38,
motion.
is 38 all the entire 18,892,000 change? Or is it, can we line item it like you have it on 37?
38 is the full 22,438,000. On that, BET, I will give our recommendation in 37. When we get to 38, you can either adopt our recommendation as a whole, or you can split out and do whatever your board wants to do. So you can do things individually, you can lump it together, that's at your discretion.
How do you want to handle it?
You want to go back and you need to go.
I'm happy to answer any questions. I just wanted to be here to just once again thank you all for your consideration of this item.
I think we certainly understand your bind, and we understand our bind. And I appreciate you taking time to come and explain it, though.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Is it all right with you, Mr. Warren, if we
That'll be fine. We can go back to the beginning and then.
it'll just be a minute, I think. Albert, are you doing this part for the regular report?
For this month, I'll have Brooke. She'll be presenting.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
No, you're fine.
They're gonna do it together. We're gonna tag team.
Teamwork makes the dream work. As we all see, this morning we are going to present the August financial statements from the county clerk's finance team. Our first page is going to be the general fund budget that was approved originally July 31. July 1st, 2024. As of August 31, we have $1,453,540 as of August 31. Next, we're going to look at the general fund reserve. If we adopt the supplement today, we would increase by $529,946.95. There's also 3 reserve transfers on today's agenda that would impact that total as well. One being the assessor transfer for $67,000, a DA civil for $2,000, and an IT transfer for $259,791. If those 3 transfers are approved today, that will impact the reserve balance to $1,654,723.95. Next, we will take a look at the general fund budget analysis.
What page are you on?
I am on page 4. Sorry, let me know if I'm moving too fast. Nerves get the best of us.
Doing great.
Looking at the general fund budget analysis, as of August 31st, cash balance of $15,730,214. The general fund actual comparison. Our ending cash balance increased by 35%, looking at August 2024 versus August 2023. We see we have $15,730,213.59 as of August 31. And last year, August 2023, we only had that $11,654,158. So we increased by that 35%. I think we're doing pretty good on that. On the next slide, the Employee Benefits Fund, page 6. Our cash balance on that is $2,630,751. The next column, you have your projection, your employee benefit projection that is reporting negatively of 21 million. That negative reporting is due to our moving of the employee benefits premium to the employee benefit supplement. On this reporting, we are currently working on adjusting those reportings to show the supplement in this portion. Right now, it was not, but we are working diligently to get that adjusted so that we can see that 21 million decrease. The next one is not on here, but it is the medical and prescription claims that John will later discuss with y'all after a while. Oh, it is up there. They switched it on me. Okay, it's there, but John will speak about that. That's why it's blank. The next thing, we are going to look at the employee benefits comparison from 24 to 23. Our expenditures have decreased by 5.2% compared to 2023 timeframe. I think we are doing really good with our expenditures decreasing by that 5%. And lastly, we have the capital project budget details. We have $385,500 in allocated funds as of August 31. And this will conclude the August monthly financials. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns?
Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to receive that report?
Motion received.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The assessor will note that they've ballooned this thing up for you so you can read. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Cody.
Good morning, everyone. You'll notice a few changes to the watch list this month. Last month we had 0 on there. As we went through the September supplement discussions, we added some items to the watch list. We also added some items that we're recommending funding from the supplement today. Those are mostly items that were increases that were known on estimate of needs effective July 1. However, with a flat budget, we didn't get those funded. So I'll just go over those a little bit here real quick. You have agenda item number 40 is $2,000. That would be a transfer in for the DA civil fee. 41 is an item that you guys will address, transferring for ESRI related our GIS program, some contract expenses there. And then item 42 is some IT related items. We do have, those are all of the recommendations today. There is one that we have a recommendation, but it did not make it onto the agenda, and that is for the assessor. We will get that on for the next budget board. That's the 17-223, but it is in the recommended column. Right now, you have just over $1.4 million in the reserve account. The treasurer will have some good news for you in an agenda item upcoming. I'll let them address that. We are, based upon our recommendation on the supplement, going to have a little bit of funding that we recommend moving into the reserve, just over $59,000. The total for the recommendations today is the $346,014. Keep in mind, $17,223 of that is a recommendation for an item that's not on here, so we can't take action on that today. If there's any questions on any of those items that I mentioned, or the ones that we have just on for a tracking, I can address any of those that you'd like.
And your reasoning for not going ahead and funding the District 1 special election is because you're waiting to see how much it's going to cost in total?
It's on the watch list at 300,000. We don't know when an election's going to be. We don't know if there's, what other elections are going to be around that time, as far as cost sharing. So we don't have those numbers, but it is on the watch list.
And do you know what time we'll have to cut that check to the election board?
I mean, we'll have to have a number from them first as far as what they're going to need.
I would think we'd have to have a number from the governor's office first. I mean, dates.
The dates, yes. Yeah, that's the first shoe to drop is the dates, so we know what the election is going to fall on. And then I think Doug would be able to get us a pretty good number. I talked to Kelly the other day over there, and she said once they kind of have all that ironed out, she'd be happy to get with me and let me know what, if any, anticipated expenses that they would need us to help fund.
And if that election date is set on a date that coincides with other municipalities or jurisdictions that are having elections, then that cost would go down, correct?
It could be deeply impacted, yes.
And then Cody, you said the 346,014.73 that's in the recommended call would actually be less the 17,223.
Yes.
So today it's 328,791.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, if there are no other questions of Cody, is there a motion to receive his report?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And I don't know if it matters, but on my computer screen, when we're saying it's voting on something, it's not the item we're talking about. Does it matter? Mine said 27 instead of 37.
All of ours say 28.
It is 27. Okay. All right, my mistake. Mr. Wilkerson.
Sure. Good morning. Just a quick comparison of our medical and prescription expenses this fiscal year versus last fiscal year. I did 2 reports on the board's agenda. One's through the end of August. What I'm going to focus on is the most recent one. This is as of today. So medical compared to this time versus last fiscal year at the same time, we're down 2%, 42,000. Or I'm sorry, wrong report. Let me switch over to the next one. Medical, as of 9/19, we're down 7%, 277,000, which is good. Prescription costs were down 748,000 compared to the same claim period last fiscal year. We received more in reimbursements, so overall, through 9/19 of 2014 through the same time last fiscal year, we're down $1.2 million or 21%. That's all I have unless you have any questions.
Is there a motion to receive his report?
Motion received.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. The assessor.
Anybody here from the jail trust? Nope. Well, that's disappointing.
What is this thing?
No action or
Apparently
comments?
not. No, sir.
Okay. Item 30, Madam Clerk.
Yes, I am going to ask Chantel to come up. She's going to give a brief overview on what's going on with the CARES Act. It's just kind of a quick high-level overview of where we've been, where we're at, and just kind of an idea of what may come in the future, and wanting to make sure that everybody is in the loop on CARES. Go ahead, Chantel.
Right, thank you. Just as the high-level background, CARES started in March of 2020
Oklahoma County was awarded approximately $47 million. At that time, we had a CARES team that consisted of BET, the finance team, of course, and then the officers that administrated the funds, the requisitioning officers, department heads, receiving officers. Of course, you had the oversight and governing boards of BOCC and budget board that had their role. Currently, in April, we had what's called an entrance conference with an auditing firm that was hired by U.S. Treasury. Castro and Company was the name of the firm, and they started what's called a desk review. This is the first step to a federal audit, and we had just completed it as of Friday, September 13th, and we had over 800 submittals within that audit. It was very extensive, very complex, and I would say confidently that the conversation was different than our own Oklahoma audit that we had with the state auditor's office. Not that one was good or bad, but just very different in the things that they were looking at and the information that they were asking for. Currently, we do not have a final report of their findings. It is coming. I hope to receive that in the next, I was hoping this week, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we should have a preliminary report that will be presented as standard operation to the BOCC for receipt of that report, which will be sent to U.S. Treasury. From the conversations I've had with the auditing firm, there are some question costs that they will be reporting on, and the only information I could provide today is it's in the ballpark of $200,000, just a little bit less than that. I do know that is going to be updated. I just am hoping for lower, and I think we can all be wise to expect maybe a little higher, but that information will be provided to you soon. I'd be happy to answer any questions for everybody. There is a copy of the submittal available on the county server. So if there is ever a question of what did it look like, what was involved, what documents, we have that information and can share that with anybody at any time. And that's your high-level CARES audit update.
Thank you. I know it's been a lot of work. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Questions of Chantel? I don't know if there's a motion needed. It's just information.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then while she's here, the same thing, we just want to give an update on the ARPA project as well to make sure that everybody is in the loop.
Absolutely. So ARPA, another round of federal funding, is started in May of 2021, and we were awarded approximately $154 million. The ARPA team is a little bit more robust than the CARES team, so we have hired a consultant. P&G serves as an oversight body. Of course, purchasing and finance serve the same roles in accounting and compliance. Our officers, BOCC, and budget board serve the similar roles as with CARES. Currently, we have major projects ongoing. Just as a high level, I won't go over all of them because there's several, but some that you may be aware of. The first floor entrance and security project, including the clerk's books, a center relocation project, the elevator project, which includes 6 different locations. The 5th floor court clerk social distancing project is another one. Kraus, the Emergency Operations Center, is an ARPA project. We have 60, well, more than 60 community subrecipient contracts that are being monitored through that spending. We also have the Sheriff's Community Violence Intervention Program that is ongoing, and our Emergency Management Communications Project. Just as a high level, there's some little ones in there too, but those are our big ones. I would say right now that we're monitoring. Infrastructure Committee, is also a part of the ARPA team that has a line of sight and oversight into our construction projects. And we have an owner's rep that also serves for construction projects, much bigger team. The main thing just to touch on, and not to bore you any further, is we do have an encumbrance deadline coming up of December 31, 2024. I have been working with our leadership team and the Accenture team to talk about what a timeline looks like for what if I need to go to bid. What's the earliest I need to set a bid out in order to have the money put together in place before that deadline. So we're just looking at all the different steps to see, are we on time? Are we on schedule? Are we going to meet that 31st encumbrance deadline? Everything's looking pretty good. Of course, once all POs are issued at the end of this year, my team will have a party, and then we will be tracking expenditures, which the deadline will be December 31st of 2026. And we'll have a different conversation then, but that'll be a good time, just tracking the expenses.
Questions of Chantel?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chantal, before any of these transfers are made, is there a legal opinion that's been asked, or has there been any verification from the DA's office or any legal authority on whether these transfers can be made with those funds?
Transfers in regard to sending to a subrecipient,
Right.
I believe that all of that is vetted through the Policy and Governance Committee, and at times there are legal opinions requested.
Okay.
But our consultant that we hired reviews and vets every single ARPA dollar that would leave, and they recommend to P&G with supportive documentation, each of those.
And often give risk assessment counsel about how confident they are.
Well, also in their contract is, Joe, remind me, when we went through this exercise creating this contract, we actually put them on the hook for anything
There
that
is
the feds
a-
could claw back on.
And I don't remember, Commissioner, there is an indemnification that the consultant provides to the county on disallowed costs. We're talking about the ARPA project. With regard to what Chantel's discussing on the infrastructure projects and those, as she said, everything is run initially through the consultant for eligibility. If it's ineligible, it's never brought forward. And so the projects that we are currently have ongoing are eligible expenditures. So.
And I think for those that they offer risk factors, I'm not sure about the indemnification. I think if you ignore their counsel and proceed, that it's exempt.
I don't
So
think we've done that yet.
some of those individual recipient ones, I'm more thinking along the lines of those that they contain, I think, some risk.
And
Didn't they advise us, so at the time we hired them, that they were not lawyers and that their opinion was not a legal opinion, and therefore they couldn't be held accountable if it falls short, and our legal department says we crossed the line? I believe we had a conversation with them. We asked them if they represented us in the very beginning. They said no, they were not attorneys.
Okay. Happy to make them available to you if you'd like to discuss it further with the consultants.
Concerned about liabilities.
And generally, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Go ahead.
You and Commissioner Davidson can correct me, but as I recall, in those subrecipient agreements, there is, if disallowed costs are fine, they are responsible for paying the county back. Am I remembering that correctly?
That's correct.
Chantel, thank you.
Thank you.
Assuming on their ability to pay, I think. I think the likelihood is that several of them wouldn't be able to. Any other on that item? If not, this is requested by District 132.
Yeah, this is actually a BET item. BET requested this one. As we were going through the September supplement, trying to figure out different ways to pay for different things, we all have escalating costs annually just based on inflationary pressures. One thing that was brought to us was from our employee benefits department via our pharmacist out at the county pharmacy. It appears as if we have to transition away from an indigent pharmacy as of November 1 due to some legislative changes. The pharmacist out there has been in conversations with Mr. Wilkerson about transitioning that pharmacy program from an indigent / county benefit pharmacy to a county benefit pharmacy only. And if we do that, John's been looking at the numbers, what that could do for us. And if you want any specifics, he can kind of get into that. The latest number that I saw this morning was greater than what we had talked about in BET. It could be potentially $1 million+ of inflow into, after paying for the program and all of that, there's looks like substantial money potentially on the table to be able to help infuse our employee benefits account so that we don't get in. So we limit our exposure month or year to year from having to do the pass the hat like we've had to do the last couple of years. So it's something that we've we talked about, and we would make a recommendation. The recommendation from BET is that Budget Board request us to continue looking into this to see the viability of extending that program, at least through the fiscal year. It's already funded. The money's already in that budget, and see what we can potentially do.
So are you saying there's the ability to generate revenue through keeping it, obviously taking the indigent portion out, and just making it county portion?
Yes, and when I say employees, of course, I'm referencing those that are on our insurance plan. John can provide some of those, some of the guesstimates on the
That
numbers.
includes the retirees too, correct?
Yes, sir. It would be employees, retirees, everybody that is on our insurance plan.
And the money would go into the benefits?
That would be the intent. That's what we were talking about internally at BET. But of course, this board can, choose to do with those revenue dollars what they want. But we were thinking that if we could have that going in there and start building up a balance in that account, because the dollars that go into that account are only spent on employee benefits. They're only spent to pay doctors for services that doctors rendered, to pay for prescriptions that are filled. So it's not, all kinds of other stuff. It is actually things that our employees are utilizing on the benefit plan, and these dollars going in there are going to be used to pay things that the county would otherwise have to come up with other funding for.
So our cost of operations basically stay the same. The difference would be we'd start making a profit. The money could go in benefits to help the employees with their medical expenses.
Yes, all of the indications appear that we would be able to pay for the operations through the program, and on top of paying for those operations, have a net at the end of the day of the number we talked about in BET preliminarily was around $300,000 for this fiscal year, and potentially $1 million-ish next fiscal year when we're dealing with a full fiscal year. John's been having some conversations with our provider, and it looks like there's some avenues to utilize some other savings, 20% savings on $8.4 million of our prescription costs last year, our net prescription costs last year, and it was $1.6 million just right there. So what he told me this morning is as they dig more and more and more and peel layers back, there's more and more savings that we can potentially realize, as well as receive the retail side. I mean, right now, if somebody goes to, a pharmacy and fills that retail, they're making that revenue. This is a way for us to keep that in-house and be able to make sure that our employees are able to receive the benefits that they currently have. Prescriptions are one thing that this board has really, really looked at hard in the past. Some of those prescriptions are getting really, really expensive. And if we can figure out a way that we can fill those prescriptions at a cheaper cost and make the back end revenue to come in and support that plan, that's what BET would like to do, is be able to have your authorization to continue looking into that and get back with you in short order.
And if more people use our drugstore out there at the county, then basically our cost in drugs would go down because the bigger volume we buy, the less we pay.
Yes, sir, we get more rebates, and then we get more savings, but we'd also get more rebates. Is that a fair?
So we would have to really educate county employees, retirees, to really drive them away from using pharmacies to utilize the county pharmacy, to then in turn see that.
Yes. Yeah. So right now, the county pharmacy, if you're on our insurance plan, generic maintenance drugs are covered at no copay for our employees and our retirees. So that's a huge savings and a huge benefit for our employees and our retirees. If we expand this beyond just maintenance and generics, and with an education piece that the employees realize that this program is out there, that they can get these prescriptions filled at a no copay. And by the way, those net numbers that we talked about was considering the no copay. Then the employees and retirees see a benefit just like they do on our 100% programs for our certain surgeries and that kind of stuff. They could see that same benefit here, but the county could also see a win-win from reduced costs and then revenue coming in.
With the changes with the gel and the healthcare Is this something that could be looked at as well? That the jail could use this pharmacy? There'd be a partnership there.
Are you talking about for us to fill scripts for detainees over there or for the employees that are over there?
The detainees.
I don't know. I don't know.
I know they're going through a lot of
You know the
changes
answer to
with
that?
turnkey leaving
Initially,
and
that was my question,
a
and
whole-
not just there, but juvenile as
Right,
well. We've
right,
got
right, yeah.
scripts that we have to fill for them. I don't know what our provider,
Which
I
would
think-
be helpful to continue to do some research to see if this was a viable option.
Yes, so bare minimum, we could look at, the employees that are on our plan. But because there are some limitations from our provider, most providers out there would not allow something like this. The stars are kind of aligned in the fact that we've got a pharmacist that has retail experience that worked for a tribe, and when she got there, they were doing their pharmacy program similar to the way that we're doing it now. She talked to them about making the type of change that we're making now and worked them through that. So she's there, she saw that, she would be able to help us through this. We're already set up with our licensing, with our, software infrastructure and everything. So if we continue down that path, we could potentially see some great savings. And then if our provider, like I said, John had indicated that a lot of the prescription providers don't allow that. A lot of the insurance companies, we use UMR on the medical side and our 100% benefit. Not everybody that you go through on that would allow it, but we've got that on our medical side. And it just so happens that who we're with on the pharmacy side is willing to allow us to do the no copay for our employees through a pharmacy. Is that fair?
That's correct. And yeah, we have great relationships. Of course, we're with Affirmed RX right now on our pharmacy side behind the scenes. And part of that is they have access to cost plus drugs. And that's a wholesale drug company where we could purchase drugs at a very reduced cost. They're the biggest name around right now. So we have access to those wholesale drug contracts too to make this happen. So there's a lot of different things that fall in place. One thing to remind you, we're already paying these costs every day when somebody goes to CVS, Walgreens, wherever. There's a huge markup is what we're finding. Some prescription drugs, not so much, but a lot of them, there's a huge markup that we're paying out that we could actually save those dollars per prescription. It's just a win-win for everyone.
John, if, as Cody mentioned, November 1st, the indigent side goes away. If there's a decision to eliminate these services completely, that will require notification to our employees, correct?
Correct. Yes, 60-day notice before services can end. That's part of healthcare laws. You have required 60-day notice. So say the pharmacy went away, we'd have to time it so there'd be a 60-day notice before it would end.
Okay, and then you've talked a lot about the savings we could realize, but if this ends as a benefit for our employees, wouldn't there be an increase that we're paying because everything's gone retail?
Yeah, absolutely. And the more we peel back the layers, right now but previously we didn't have information that we have now that we can see the wholesale price of drugs and the whole process. So we have 157 retirees that get their medication there monthly and 175 employees. But it would add at least $100,000 to our prescription plan cost. Those just going through retail pharmacy, plus those retirees and those employees aren't paying anything out of their pocket now. So there'd be those added costs to them as well. And other groups do this. A lot of hospital systems do it. It's really a win-win for everyone.
So do we need to make a motion on this, continue the pharmacies? That's what the motion be for our employees and for the benefit of our retirees?
I believe the motion would be to study, right?
Do you need
Well,
to-
whatever,
we-
the agenda item is to consider continuing a pharmacy. But it also is to allow us to continue studying if you guys want BET to continue
I'd like to make a
studying.
motion to continue the pharmacy.
I'll second.
Sounds like a great benefit to us.
On the employee copays, that doesn't, for my monthly prescription, I pay $2.73 as my copay. And I can walk from my house to my pharmacy. So there's no real benefit. There's a lack of convenience for the employee.
So there's many prescriptions that employees pay $60 plus per month. And those are really and we targeted certain prescriptions. You know, the real cheap generics, you have to go to your local pharmacy. We're not going to save much money. There's thousands of other prescriptions every month that cost an employee way more than that we'd target.
I have one that costs 70 a month. It's cool.
Yeah.
Based on the convenience aspect of it, is there a way to apply the convenience so that it does drive people from away?
Yeah, we can do mail order for maintenance drugs. So maintenance drugs usually one you take every day, every week, every month, no matter what. They currently do mail order, so we can do mail order for those, get those prescriptions filled, and you know the really the costly ones are the ones that we'd want to target. But there's so much savings there, so much savings.
John, how much money do we spend out of pocket for, or how much money out of pocket do county employees pay every month? And would that money, instead of going through a copay, come back to the county?
No, so that copay would just not come out of their pocket, and I can't calculate what their copays are that they currently pay.
But effectively, there would be no more copays if you were working through the system to have the drugs delivered.
Exactly. It's that
on a
carrot.
monthly
You know?
basis.
It'd be that driving factor to drive them to get the prescriptions there. And so it's kind of in the incentive towards it.
Plus the $1 million a year that would go into our benefits package.
Yeah.
Well, that was gonna be my question, is where does that $1 million
So it would just flow right back through the employee benefits plan. It's one of those reimbursement schedules that would go through as a prescription reimbursement.
Okay, where does that money come from? Is that the money that the employees are paying for their drugs?
No. So what it's paying for is when they'd go to the pharmacy would run their insurance card. Okay. They'd bill Affirmed RX. If Affirmed RX would bill us, we would pay it. Then that money would come back to us.
It's simply, instead of the pharmacy making the profit and their business to make profit, we would make the profit.
Exactly. And some of those
Cut out the
drugs are
middleman.
huge. Some of the more expensive drugs that we pay for every month, there's a $6,000 profit margin just on one drug.
And it seems we started doing that, might even save us next year, year after in insurance.
Yeah. It's a unique opportunity that most groups would never have the ability to do because they don't have a pharmacy. And
Well,
We have a motion and a second.
Do we,
Yeah, but
Is
we're
this
not
gonna-
finished discussing.
is this gonna be like a brick and mortar type thing?
they already have a location, so they would just keep that and really just operate where they're operating now. So we wouldn't have to expand anything. Same staff.
Where is that?
Over at Juvenile.
Okay.
And so the majority of it would just be mail order drugs. Because most people, if you just need a one-time prescription, you're just going to go to your pharmacy. But really those maintenance prescriptions are the ones you want to target. But they could get everything except controlled substances. I'm not going to do that. And then some of the most expensive specialty drugs that require special treatment, you know, a $40,000 a month drug, those have to be refrigerated and certain things. And so none of those or no controlled substances.
And how many employees are going to be required to run this?
So we have five full-time, one part-time. Their total budget for the year would be $535,000. Again,
These are all existing.
All existing employees, just a total switch over. They already have the software. We're already in works of getting a contract. So there's 2 network agreements we would do, one to buy our drugs and one basically to be in the network. And we're working out those details. Don't see any issues with that. We'd have to increase our umbrella of liability insurance to $3 million, and that will only cost $2,000 a year to increase that. So really no outflow of extra costs. I really think it'll pay for itself plus save money for everybody.
And John, are you anticipating that if the board chooses to expand the program as you're talking about, that you would have enough information to make a determination prior to next FY as to the viability?
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes.
So one of the things I'm interested in is which tribe it was. And then is there a way that we could talk to them and find out what their pitfalls and everything are and make sure that we don't follow the same?
Well, we have many other clients, or our PBM has many other clients that do their own pharmacies, and it's all a win. Everyone, the way we would structure it, it's a win-win.
No, I understand that, but you said that this pharmacist helped set one of these up already.
I said that.
Okay.
I don't know what what tribe it was. That's what I was told by our social services director, was that she set that up there, or worked with them to set that up. But talking to John, our current provider, talked to John about numerous other entities, hospitals in particular, that have done this while they were with this particular provider, and this provider worked them through those transitions. And so as far as any of those learning curves, our current provider is the one that's giving John all of those projections and helping us structure this, because they've done it before and know what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. Is that?
Yeah, they're the ones that actually do it behind the scenes. So we already have them, and then they have strategic partners for the wholesale drugs. We already have all the pieces in place.
So all of these benefits are available to the employees right now. Like Mr. Warren wouldn't pay his $60 copay he's paying if he went to the pharmacy
No.
right now.
So just a certain select few of maintenance generic drugs are available now through the county pharmacy. This would expand it to, every drug except some specialties and the controlled substances.
So it's not a benefit currently.
No, just the
It is,
generic
but this
side.
would expand the realm of benefit that you have. So right now you may have 6 prescriptions that you take a month. 2 of them may be a generic maintenance drug that you could currently get filled there, but then you've got 4 others that you have to fill somewhere else, because we don't offer those. We only offer the maintenance generic drugs. This would expand that from the 2 that you, I'm not saying that you have 6 and how that breakdown is, but just under that, model, you could potentially fill those other 4 that are more of a cost driver on our plan than what those maintenance, generic maintenance drugs are. Those aren't the cost drivers. It's the more expensive ones. That's what we're looking at trying to encompass, so that we can kind of control those, instead of, there was talks in the past about doing away with particular prescriptions that are available for employees. And so that we don't have to have discussions about potentially cutting prescriptions, we can look at offering those prescriptions at a much reduced cost and receive the revenue on the back end, so that we can afford to continue doing that. And then that money would come into the employee benefits fund. And to Mrs. Treat's question earlier, those funds go into the employee benefits account, but that does, I think our hope and our goal, if the stars align and everything's perfect, that it would just be building up a balance in that account. And we would continue funding employee benefits the way we are at those levels. But if we see other things that we need to pay for, and we choose not to grow that balance in there for a rainy day, then it would free up potential general fund dollars. For instance, if it's the $1 million that we were talking about, next year, the board would have the option to not put $1 million of general fund dollars that we're going to be talking about later going into employee benefits to be available for other expenses, whether it's the jail or the sheriff's office or, the court clerk, any of you guys. It would potentially be available. So, absolutely.
Don't want to leave them off.
One more quick question. We're not ending any benefits to where individuals can go to CVS, Walgreens, whatever, correct?
That's
So
not
there's-
what this. That's not what
No,
this
no, no.
plan
That's,
is.
so we're still able to go to those.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So I have a question about the motion, Mr. Warren. Was your motion to continue to provide the benefit that we're currently providing, or was your motion to expand upon that to include an increased formulary?
To expand basically what our experts, John, who I trust completely, has brought to us. I think if we expand it to that, to where our employees and our retirees can go out there and get the medicines they need and not have to pay the copay, and that would enlarge, because now we'd start carrying all medicines to our best, what we can carry. That's my motion, that we go the full route.
Okay, any other discussion? I personally think this will be hard to compete with Walgreens and the corporate conglomerates and getting employees to participate. But there's been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. No. Thank you for your time. Here you got a number.
Good morning. We are not asking for any money. We're giving some back.
Microphone.
House Bill 3768 passed this last session. It goes into effect November 1st. Goes into effect November 1st. This increases the allowable cost out of resale that we can pay to run the treasurer's office. It's a good deal. So in anticipation of the November 1st through the June 30th, we put some numbers together. Wanted to go ahead and do this during the supplement, just so we can free up the dollars to use this year. So it comes down to that we are turning back $470,000, $470,467.91 out of our general fund. As it stands now on the watch list, it would be rolled into the reserve and increase the reserve. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion? Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Cody?
Yeah, this is another recommendation from BET. This is to create a line item in the county capital account, specifically for courthouse maintenance. We receive a $779,000 and change amount from the court fund every year. Last year, we structured it via an MOU that would allow the county to use certain of those funds for utilities and offset certain costs. But the court wanted to reserve $250,000 of that for draperies, carpets, and paint to be able to do that kind of upkeep over there. BOCC entered into that contract and into that MOU last year, and then we've entered into it again this year. With speaking with facilities, the difficulty there is those dollars come into the general fund. They don't come in monthly or whenever those invoices are sent out, because it's a reimbursement on the $250,000. That doesn't go into the facilities account. It just goes into the general account as revenue coming in. So it puts a strain on facilities to be able to perform that work without having those dollars. So we talked about, well, do we want to increase the facilities budget? I talked to Keith about that, and we thought that the cleanest, most transparent way to do this would be to create a line item in the capital account and put the $250,000 of reimbursement that we get into that account. And then when they're expending dollars for those purposes, they just draw upon those dollars. That way, when the courts want to see an accounting for the $250,000, he's not going through his huge budget where he's paying utilities everywhere and doing all this kind of stuff. It's all contained within that one line item, so it'll be easier to track, easier to justify, easier to show to the courts if we do it like that. So this agenda item is just creating that line item. Part of our supplement recommendation in item 37 will be loading the $250,000 into that account. We need to load it up front, and then as we do that work and get reimbursement, it'll come into the county. And the thought process is at the beginning of next fiscal year, we'll look and see how much is still in that account, and then we'll probably have a recommendation to put whatever dollars we need in there to true it back up to $250,000. So we're starting the year kind of like we did with the indigent GPS funding in the past, trying to keep it at a $50,000 level at the beginning of the year. It'd be kind of the same thing here, just annually catching that account up to where there's the $250,000. But we do need to front load it somewhere so that facilities can actually have the money to perform those functions.
I'll make a motion to make a line item for the courthouse maintenance.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Go ahead.
Okay, so if you recall, we did not change the employer rates last year. Normally, we have a recommendation for the employer rates. Those dollars are then anticipated, built into the estimate of needs that each department fills out, and then it becomes effective July 1. Well, with some of the unknowns that we, excuse me, that we had on the plan, we weren't comfortable making a recommendation then on the rates. So our recommendation was that we wait until September supplement. We got a little bit more time to see how the plan performed, and then we can make a recommendation on changing the rates at that point. And budget board wanted to take that approach. So we're here today with those rate recommendations. BET looked at it and we're recommending a 3% increase, excuse me, in the employer rates effective July 1, 2024, and a 3%, roughly, those percentages are 2.9 to 3.1 or 3.2 to make them whole dollars. And you can see that in your attachment. That way an increase was $5 instead of $5.17 or whatever. So the employer rate premium increase would go into effect 7/1 of 2024. Part of the recommendation for the supplement that we have is a backfilling of those dollars into the general fund accounts, as well as uh, the general government account for the Criminal Justice Authority, because they would also have that 3% increase. So we've included those cost increases for the employer premiums in our September supplement recommendation. So it would be the 3% for the employer rates, and then the employees and the retirees, it's still that 3% increase, but those would go into effect January 1, 2025. And we have to have an answer for sure on the employee rates, because the open enrollment is coming up and our employee benefits department has to have that number so they can get that out to the employees when they're electing coverages for the next calendar year.
Dollars impact for employees, family, and single, and then the impact on the county budget?
It's right there on your.
I don't see it.
It's $5 for a employee single, $11 for employee family. Cobra, those increases are slightly more because that Cobra person is paying considerably more. It's 27 and 64. And retirees, retiree with Medicare 2, retiree single 5, retiree and family with Medicare is 4. The highest increase for our retirees is $11
a month.
Yes, sir.
And just to back up a moment, we've not changed employee retiree rates in quite some time. Looking at that, BET is concerned about the long-term viability of that plan. We don't want to get into a situation to where 2 or 3 years down the road, all of a sudden it's, employees and retirees, you got a $100 increase or a $70 increase. We think that staging it in small increments is a good idea. We've also looked at the fact that we've been giving COLAs/merit, an ability for an elected official to give an increase in pay associated with the CPI for the year. Part of that CPI is an increase in healthcare costs. So part of our recommendation in 37 is an adjustment to general fund accounts of 2.5% for salaries and benefits, so that elected officials have a discretionary ability to increase employee pay by close to CPI. We weren't comfortable getting all the way up to CPI where our supplement revenue dollars fell. So we do have we have an item on the watch list for an additional 0.5% that we could consider later in the year when we kind of have an idea where we are on the other watch list items. So we didn't do a full 3%. We got 2.5% in our supplement recommendation for those costs. So the thought process is, let employees know that annually there's going to be a change in those rates at, like a 3%, and then we're offsetting that with the potential pay increase to offset those CPI numbers. So it's kind of a targeted approach, so that we're looking at all aspects instead of just ignoring one and then getting into a situation where we have to adjust those rates dramatically. And that's difficult when employees can't, when they can't plan. Employees and retirees can't plan. If they know it's a 3% increase, and if we do that every year, then they will expect that and they will budget that. And when they're thinking about taking on additional debt load or whatever, they know that those expenses are going to be there and it's not a shock. And then if we're also doing our best, like in our supplement recommendation, to give them an offset on their pay to allow for them not falling behind on their pay by CPI adjustments, then it's treating it fair both on our expense side and then also on the employee's expense side. So that was kind of our approach.
Well, we've needed to go up on the rates. I mean, that's been a big reason we're passing the hat the last couple of years. It's on our medical. That's just the hardcore reality of it. Is there a motion?
Just real quick, Cody, how much does the $1 million a year that we potentially can make from the pharmacy affect this? 3% increase, offsetting cost.
The employee and retiree, the 3% increase is nowhere near $1 million. We're not generating that much money. So if you're asking, would the $1 million offset this? Yes, it would do more than offset it. But the idea is for that to build a balance and for us to have some small increases built in there so that employees are taking a little bit of a bite at a time on those rate increases instead of having an, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? Now it's a $125 increase.
So if the pharmacy works like we think it will work, then maybe next year the 3% wouldn't be necessary. This year, based on the unknown, we should go ahead and vote the 3%. But next year we take a look at what we have, how much we built up in benefits, and we might be just fine without raising it.
Certainly. And we have in the past, I think the last time there was a rate adjustment to employees and retirees, if I remember correct, it was actually a reduction in the premium amount. The last time there was an adjustment, it was down. So there's always the ability to adjust that down based upon trends and plan performance. But right now, we think based upon the last couple of years, and we don't know for sure on the pharmacy, it looks very, very, very promising. But we wanted to come to you with what we felt like was a reasonable approach to make an adjustment on the employee and the retiree, as well as the employer. And then we've got that offset on the other side in our recommendation on the 2.5%. Because if you have a 2.5% increase in your pay rate, that is more than a 3% increase on your actual bill here, right? Because you get 2.5% of a larger number than the 3% of a much smaller number. So that is our recommendation.
Any other questions of Cody? Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the revised general fund revenues for 24-25. Any questions of Albert? Is there a motion?
Well, just real quick, Albert, does
Yes,
this,
sir.
it looks like a total supplement amount that our September supplement is $22 million.
Yes, sir. That included the 14 million from the sheriff, ARPA. That was
Okay.
left over, yeah, and ARPA interest along with what we've left over for supplement, yes.
Okay, so, but what was the actual supplement besides, I mean, if you.
3.5.
remove those, 3.5 million.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Motion.
thank you.
Is there a second?
I'd like to ask about the transfer of money to the jail. There's $4 million being transferred to the jail in this, under this item, is that correct?
That's not this item.
Okay,
This is the revised general fund revenues.
gotcha.
This is just the numbers.
Is there a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now 37.
Okay. The previous item where you guys updated the revenues, that gross amount was 22,438,599.08. The vast majority of that was one-time funding. If you recall, late last spring, the sheriff's office had over $14 million that we utilized ARPA as a reimbursement for salary expenses from previous periods. Our consultant, Accenture, looked at that and said that that was a qualified expense. And so that was something that BOCC chose to do. Budget Board approved as well. So that money was made available for general fund last spring. Now, it was not included in the revenue projection dollars for the July 1 budget. It wasn't loaded in there yet, so it's just kind of been sitting there. So it's become part of the September supplement. That's where the vast majority of that is. And then we've got $4 million of anticipated ARPA interest for this year that we're budgeting. So that gets us to a total of $92,110.32 of one-time increase monies. The ongoing increase, if we didn't have those two one-time kind of influxes, is $3,546,488.76. So that includes, ad valorem increases, contract, increases, and some other stuff. A lot of it, though, is from your departments and your offices lapsing money back at the end of the year, being diligent about saving wherever you can. So some of that $3.5 million is your rollover dollars. Okay. So what we did this year was similar to the previous year. As we were looking at the supplement, we divided things into two columns. We had our $18,892,110.32 of one-time revenue, and then we looked at one-time expenses to fund with that particular revenue. We wanted to be careful that we weren't looking at ongoing expenses into subsequent fiscal years funding out of that money, because we won't have that money in subsequent years. So we had two columns, a one-time column and then an ongoing column. In the ongoing column, we worked off of the $3.5 million balance, and we looked at funding things in those two columns depending upon whether they were a one-time expense or an ongoing expense. Okay, so those two numbers together equal the number that was discussed just a minute ago in the revenue, which is $22,438,599.08. Okay, so we'll start with the one-time funding, which was the $18,892,000. BET is recommending a transfer of $13,592,110.32 to the 2080 account, which is the new jail construction account. And then we are also recommending the balance of that full $18.8 million, which is $5.3 million, to go towards the new courtrooms that will be built out at Juvenile that Presiding Judge Ogden spoke about earlier, that Mr. Warren brought up. So those numbers, the amount going into 2080 for the new jail and behavioral care center, as well as the juvenile courtrooms, add up to the $18,892,110.32. So that would be the full balance of the one-time dollars. The ongoing operations, we've got several items that we are recommending changes in budgets on. One of them I had mentioned earlier, the $250,000, moving it into the line item that you guys created in agenda item number 34 for the court maintenance. We're recommending $50,000 be made available to Juvenile to replace two heat exchangers in their detention center. They need to get those done before the cold weather gets here, so we are recommending that those are funded. There is a statutory requirement that elected officials pay changes go into effect July 1. We've got $44,494.77 for all 8 elected officials, so that we stay within the statutory requirements. Speaking of statutory requirements, since we've had an adjustment in the revenue dollars up, we also have to adjust the county audit budget. That is a formula based upon the revenue dollars. So statutorily, we would be required to increase the audit by $59,996. District 2 had a request to shore up salary and fringe for one of their positions, and we're recommending increasing that general fund budget by $6,976 for that purpose. We are making a recommendation of a 2.5% salary and benefit adjustment to each general fund budget, and that is tied to CPI. Like I mentioned earlier, we're not quite to CPI because we wanted to be a little bit careful there. But it's $1,219,410. The other 0.5% is on the watch list, and that is a contemplation of being retro to July 1, similar to the statutory requirement on the elected officials. We're recommending an increase to the employee benefits Fund 4010 of $1,856,092.95. Part of that is the 3% increase that we talked about earlier. We increase employer premiums. We need to get that money into the general funds, into the general fund accounts to pay for those increased premiums. So of that $1.8 million, that 3% increase on general fund employer rates is $339,000. And then we needed the 3% for the Criminal Justice Authority. That's $120,250.80. And then the balance there is an additional cash transfer. So we looked at the amount that we transferred into employee benefits for the entire fiscal year last year, including the pass the hat dollars, so that we're setting ourselves up in as good of a position as possible so we don't see ourselves in the situation that we were in last year. Keep in mind, you guys made an adjustment on how we fund employee benefits. We funded all of those employer premiums up front, so they're not sitting in accounts and then not being transferred over potentially. So we kind of shored that up to make sure that those general fund employer premiums are taken care of up front. The 3% that we're recommending change on the general fund budgets would be in the same manner that we did July 1. It would go into everybody's budget, but it would be a direct deduct similar to what we did on July 1.
Cody, can you remind me and maybe the others? You mentioned that, like, for our individual budgets, the benefit cost is going directly into the employee benefits cost center.
Yes.
Was that same change made to the dollars that were previously being sent to down the street to the Criminal Justice Authority?
Yes.
So we're retaining those dollars here?
Yes. Instead of us recouping those dollars monthly via paychecks, we just took it all out up front. We did that across the board for all of the general fund accounts. That's paid for as a contract out of the general government. So yes, it was treated the same as all of your general fund budgets. So when we were
funding at a certain level of FTE and they weren't meeting that level, they were just building a surplus that they could spend however they wanted. And that's now been corrected in order to shore up the benefits so that our employees don't see wild swings in their rates. Is that a fair statement?
That is potentially a fair statement. So that, I appreciate you trying to put me on the spot there, Joe. Yeah,
I'm the one
no,
that said it.
It's a fair question.
I appreciate that.
No, it's, and that is something, whenever we decided to make a recommendation to this body to make that change, one of the things that we're going to do is each year when folks turn in the estimate of needs, we're going to look and see what those requests are for the employer premiums. My anticipation is that they do like the rest of us do when we're building our budget, which is I contact Mr. Wilkerson and say, hey, give me a list of all of my employees that are on family and which ones are on single. And whenever I find out who's on single and family, I send an email out to the yard, and then I talk to our folks internally and say, are we having any changes this year? Going down to single or going up to family? And if so, then whenever I do the estimate of needs, I make those modifications. And I think your offices may not do it exactly like that, but pretty similar. I think you guys all are diligent about, about that. And I'm going to assume that they do a similar thing whenever they present their estimate of needs to us.
But to your point on the jail, and that's something that we still need to look at.
Yeah.
Right.
So, so that 1.396 million would get us into a situation to where we're transferring the same amount of money that we did last year with the 3% increased premiums. That is contemplating an ending cash balance at the end of this fiscal year if our expenses track the way John thinks our expenses are going to be, and our revenue tracks, because there's still a little bit of unknown on the revenue because our special revenue accounts, our cash accounts, we can't front fund those like we do the general fund. So there's a little bit of, unknown there. But if everything tracks the way we think, we will end with a $760,000 balance in that account. So there's a little wiggle room in there. On the watch list, you may have noticed that we have $216,244 on here. What we put that on there for was so that if we have the money at the end of the year and we put that money in and all the projections and everything line up, that would get us to an ending balance of $1 million, $1,063,000 in that account. So that's the reason why we put this on here, was so that we would get to $1 million balance at the end of the year, not because we balanced to zero and we wanted to have a $216,000 balance in there. We're anticipating with all of these recommendations that we would end up with the 700 and some odd $1,000 ending in there. And then with the pharmacy change, I mean, it could be substantially more than that. So that gets us to the total employee benefits infusion from the supplement of $1,856,092.95. So when you take that 1.8 million that I just mentioned, as well as the one-time expenditures of the 18.89, that leaves a balance of 59,479.04, and our recommendation is to add that to the reserve to begin the year.
Which will be the lowest reserve we've had in modern history.
Yes, yeah. But like last year, we didn't fund employee benefits all up front with cash transfers. We're making that adjustment this year, putting all of that in there. So that is part of the reason why it's down.
And it's
closer to
approximately
1.7.
1.6, is that right?
Yeah.
Reserve. And out of that, we approximately will have up to 100 or 300 for the election that is on the watch list.
Well, potentially, there's a lot of things beyond just the 300,000 that's on the watch list.
That's going to be funded. I mean, that's not an option. That's coming. So we really are looking at 1.3. I mean, this board just should be conscientious of that's coming.
With the, and I don't know all the details, but with the changes with the jail and the healthcare, are we anticipating that there'll be any increased cost that we should be considering for this and the fact that we don't have a whole lot in reserve? I don't know. I know
Well,
that since the jail trust doesn't care to come show up to, or not the trust, with the employees to give us a briefing to go over the budget, it makes it difficult.
I'm assuming that whenever they chose to take the action that they chose, they looked at their budget and what potential budgetary impacts that would make, and not hope that we have some type of extra funding on this end. I'm sure that was part of their calculus.
Yeah, and I think, I know Assessor Stein has had that agenda item a couple times, and I'm not going back to it, but it is helpful for transparency, if someone from the jail could come over and help us be a little bit more comfortable as we're spending money on quite a few different areas. And I trust that experts are making the best decisions that they can, but I am concerned about the cost. So that's just kind of more of my statement, not really for you to respond, Cody.
Okay, thank you.
Cody, I have a question.
Yes.
We currently fund the county jail for a certain number of employees, right? So this
Yes, sir.
3%, that money's going over for the full number that we fund them for, correct?
So their employer premiums aren't, we're not funding that on a particular the 320 that they say that they're funded for, then they look at their employees that have benefits, and that's what we're funding on, is the employees that have benefits. There may be
The employees
some,
they don't have,
there
we're
may
not
be some
funding.
fluff in there.
Yeah.
Yes, and to Joe's point and Ms. Treat, that is something that we're probably going to need to look
And
a little more in
currently
depth.
talking about the 4 million that we're gonna send over for the new jail and the 5.5 and the 4,092,000.
That also stays here.
That's money that we're gonna send over to new jail, and we need reserve money. And we can always give that money to them, but as you said, and one of your phrases a while ago was setting into an account, not setting into account. So why would we not hold some of that money back? Maybe all of it. That way, so one of the terms we had to use on the air conditioner, we had to claw the money back. We shouldn't have to claw money back. If they have a clear plan, once they get a clear plan, we're all in. We're going to help build that jail. We're going to do everything we can. We're all in favor of it. But right now, they don't have a clear plan. And so we can hold the money in reserve just as easy as they can park it in their account. So why are we not doing that? Because we have needs too. We have, as he said, we have an election. We have no idea what the cost is. We definitely need the 5,300,000 over at Juvenile, and we're gonna need more courtrooms here. We have all kinds of neat projects that we've said need money. For instance, the Juvenile first was 2 million, but we found it's gonna be more like 7 million. Because once the experts looked at it, they gave us real numbers and real allowances. And so maybe we should hold back this money until we get real numbers. And once the jail needs it, once they have a plan where they're gonna go forward, right now, we don't have a clear plan. We don't know what size jail we're building. We have no idea how much money we're going. We're 400 or 500 million away from our target number. This is a drop in the bucket, but it is not a drop in the bucket to our reserves. To our reserves, it could be very helpful if we need it. Later, we can always give it to them. We don't need it. They get the plans going, drawn up, and they're ready for money, and they got to have money to put out there. We send the money to them.
I know this isn't going to be super popular, but if we delay just a week, would there be some time to have some deeper conversations with the jail and with the trust and to have a better understanding of what some of these costs are? And probably with the Planning Commission, I heard a great presentation this morning about the new jail. It's something that I think probably would be good to present to the budget board too. That may make, I know it would make me feel a little bit more comfortable because I think we're just kind of not quite sure what some of our costs are going to be related to the jail. And we know that we have a responsibility both with the current jail and the new jail.
I think where mine comes in as the 14.8 that our office put in, the 14.8 million that our office put in. I understand all the things we need to pay for, but that was in the vein of that was going to the jail. That was going to the new jail to help with the build, and I would ask that money stays meant for that.
Let me comment on that. I'm all for you, Tommy, but at the same time, once we paid the salaries with ARPA money, then that money came back to our general fund money. It's a one-time use money, but it's general fund money for the entire county to use for whatever our needs are. And our needs right now is not the new jail. We don't have a plan for a new jail. We'd love to have an 1,800 bed new jail built, but I heard here at the last meeting it may be 500 beds, and then the cost of running that jail will not be any less than running the other one. So we're going to be running 2 jails now. We don't have the cost for that. We don't have the money for that. So this 14 million came back to our general fund. It's going to be used as reserves for whatever we need it for, including the county jail. But we can easily put that money over there 6 months from now, 3 months from now, 5 years from now, whenever they get their plans together and know what they're going to do.
So I'd like to, and I know we're not quite right, but at some point I would like to make a motion to defer the supplemental until next week, have some additional conversations, have BET have some additional conversations, have the planning committee or Stacy or somebody come in and give us a presentation on the layout for the plans. I saw some this morning. It was the first time I had ever seen them. So I think it would be good for all of us to be able to see what those plans look like, to get some more information on numbers, to just have some clarity, because they are big decisions. I have been an advocate for putting ARPA interest over into the new jail. I think it's very important that we show to the citizens that we are going to continue to do that. But I think we just need some more information.
I think what we could do, we'd be happy, BET's happy to do whatever you guys want us to do. I think the biggest question about the jail budget is going to be related to the medical contract and what that's going to be. And I don't think, Miles, correct me if I'm wrong. Sorry, Commissioner Davidson, correct me if I'm wrong. Sheriff, you're a trustee on there as well. I don't think we'll have a number in a week that gives us an idea of if they're going to need more or how much. What we could do, the
Actually, we have a
18,
number. I can tell you it's gonna be less than what the current contract is if we keep it in-house. What we are gonna do is we're gonna put it out to an RFP process. What we will see on that RFP process, if we want to limit the liability of the county, which I think would be smart, is you're gonna see that contract coming in at 20, 23, 25 million, of which it currently is 7.9.
But I don't think we can
But
live
what
on
we-
could be's and would be's. I think we would need real numbers. I agree with this treat. We could park this money right now in our reserves so that we don't have to try to claw it back to get the money to pay for medical or whatever else we need. But we do need to vote today on the 5,300,000 because that project's already started. We're ready to go on that project.
well, and I think we could do one of two things. Well, one of three things. We can either come back.
Could I ask Mr. Warren?
Yeah.
And Mr. Treat a question? After hearing your concerns about sending all the one-time money over, could we potentially look at the HVAC refund? That's a refund. That's money that was taken out of the jail in order to take care of a situation currently down there. Could we look at putting the 5.5 million and the 5.3, going ahead and funding those, and then parking the be 8,092,110.32 in reserve, and going ahead and improving our budget today and getting that done? And I know, Sheriff, your concerns.
Because I would like to separate that 14.8, because that was meant, and everything from that was meant to go to the new jail.
Right.
That's just to honor my commitments that I made.
And I would like to say that I'm actually supportive of doing that. My concern is what is the unknown on this change with the healthcare piece. I just not sure what that looks like. And I mean, Commissioner Davidson has been a part of those conversations, so I trust what he's saying. I just don't know, and I'm just wanting to make sure that we are prepared for potentially additional costs when we don't have a whole lot in reserve. So I just want to make sure that we're being responsible and not getting surprised. So maybe we do line item out a few things today and we come back when there's a little bit more information. And again, I just think it's appropriate that the jail come and present and we have some conversations, or maybe we just give the jail to the sheriff.
Well, and it was, this was brought up in BET, the change in the medical. And we didn't really hone in on that heavily because we had heard that they were looking in-house, that there would be some savings based on their current budget, or they may go out, with somebody that they get on an RFP. But that RFP process would take us way beyond our statutory requirement of the October 1. So we needed to move forward one way or another. What we could do, if the sheriff isn't comfortable with budgeting that money somewhere other than the jail, I think it would be a little easier to track if we did it into the reserve. But we could leave that money, instead of budgeting it into reserve, we could just leave that amount in the cash account, like we did a couple years ago with the ARPA reserve or the ARPA interest, and it just sat there. There was no budget decision on that yet. It just sat there, and then budget board made a decision later in the year. It was actually in the spring when you guys decided to go ahead and allocate that money into the 2080 account at that point. So it would be not making a decision on that money. It would just sit in that cash account until a later date.
Does that cash account draw the same interest as our reserve account? Does it?
The money that's sitting in our accounts would make interest.
It's all drawing the same interest?
And it's all at the same.
I can't
Right.
hear you, I'm sorry.
She's saying that the interest that the reserve makes, the interest doesn't go into the reserve, but it is accumulating.
Goes into the
interest.
county general fund.
Yeah, any of that money that's sitting on our books, they are investing that, and it's getting those returns.
Cash or reserve, either one
Yeah.
is making money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And while this recommendation includes a raise for elected officials to disseminate amongst their employees up to 2.5%, it doesn't include any funding for those that are paid for out of special revenue, correct?
That is correct.
So no highway employees are included in that and no jail trust employees included in that, right?
And this is a merit, correct?
We
Well, but
didn't,
it's
we
fully
didn't
funded
actually.
on the assumption that you're gonna give it as a COLA.
No, well, what you guys choose to do, that's fine, but the BET recommendation isn't a COLA or a merit.
But
Our
the
rec-
money is allotted as if they do max out to every employee.
The money is allotted so that they have the ability discretionarily
To give
for
to
each
every
elected
single
official,
employee.
or to give to one or to give to none. I mean, it's.
Oh, so they can give employees more than 2.5% and some none.
Our recommendation is to give a 2.5% budgetary increase to the general fund budgets so that the elected officials have a discretionary ability to
I see.
increase those. Commissioner, it's a little different. I get what
I
you're saying.
get what you're saying.
In the
but it's-
past, it was different, but this year, we changed a little bit of that nomenclature because there is some flexibility that's needed
I
from office to
appreciate that.
office. Yes, sir.
But it's an increase to those budgets, but not to special revenue and not to jail trust employees. So there will be a peer pressure on those employees to have to step up. And there's no funding for that.
We in District 1 have historically, when this board has given a COLA or provided money for merit, we have historically followed suit with our highway cash, and we've been able to manage that just fine, and I would anticipate we would do that again this time.
But we've historically given it to the jail.
No, last year was the first time that we gave it to the jail. The
When
year
they
prior,
were
we
jail
didn't.
employees
Well, when they
at
were
the
jail-
county,
yeah.
we did it.
Yeah.
Now that they're working for a trust, they're becoming a stepchild.
Well, they did not come over and request any dollars. I would anticipate that.
Well, I'm sure with what they're hearing in the news, they don't think that we have any discretionary dollars.
Well,
which
We're currently paying them for a much larger number of employees that they have, and they're taking that money, using it for whatever they want, so they're welcome to use it for raises, because
They
they're
have
definitely
funds
not hiring
available.
employees with it.
Did the jail trust indicate they had the funds to be able to cover this adjustment?
well, they had lapsed dollars.
How much?
What was the final number? 1.8 was what
So
I
it was enough
heard.
to cover any increase that we were talking about for other county employees?
Well, general fund, all of the employees on general fund is 1.2 million.
So you're telling me that there was enough reserve money over at the trust that they could have funded the entire increase for the entire county employee population?
They're currently averaging about 96,000 a month just in overtime, from what I understand, looking at the numbers.
So the jail would have the money to give the raise if they chose to adjust.
I would say looking at.
But we don't know because
to-
they're not here.
To Mr. Warren's point, they say the money that we give them for salaries, they have that budgeted for 320 employees. And I think they're 50 or 60 short of that monthly. That's a huge number that I think would be sufficient to give that. Now, they may have other plans for that money. I can't speak to what their plans are. I don't know. But if you're just looking at, would there be salary dollars left to be able to make that adjustment, I would think the answer would be in the
And do
affirmative.
they return money at the end of the year like all the other offices does?
No, sir.
So they have built that up over the years.
They have the ability to, yes, sir.
Cody, the $9.5 million, is that going to be in an account where we can access that in the case of an emergency? Or will it be in a different account that is only accessible by one department?
Not, it's in the 2080 capital account. My understanding, and Christy and I had a discussion about this, and I don't think either one of us are 100% certain. I think we're both of the opinion that once it goes into that capital account, it stays in that capital account. There is the potential maybe that it could be pulled out of the capital account, but it does stay here.
Is
at
it under the
county.
control of the budget board and the county commissioners, or is it under control of the department that we don't get to?
It's under the control of the budget board and the county commissioners. That money, the 2010 account, is here at the county.
Because I'm looking at item 27, and I'm talking about statutory stuff that I have to do, and we're not funding that yet.
And just to be clear, that 2080 account, the money, if you did if you did adopt the recommendation that BET has in its entirety, right? And the $13.5 million went into 2080 for new jail expenses. That money doesn't go over there immediately. It'll sit in the supplement account until we have cash available to move it over. So until we have the cash available later in the year to move it over, there's no doubt that a change could be made. As a matter of fact, we have a recommendation later on the watch list where $280,000 for court services was taken out immediately on July 1 for employer premiums when we don't have any employees in there. And so our recommendation, BET recommendation, is to move that from employee benefits supplement back up into that budget. And we can still do that because the money hasn't been moved. It's still sitting down there. So even if our initial inclination is correct that once it goes into the 2080 account, it can't come back out, you've got until it goes in there for budget board to make an additional decision, and that's going to be several months before we go. And when I say several months, I mean the treasurers, they're borrowing from highway cash and stuff usually until January, February, March, something like that. So it would be the springtime before this money would actually go into that
But
account. So you
wouldn't it
can
make better
adjustments then.
sense to park it in the reserves, leave it there until we know what we're gonna build? We have no idea. Once we know the size of the jail we're gonna build, and I don't think we know that yet. Once we know what our needs are to this new county jail, then we can always transfer the money over. Right now, you park it in reserves, we got total control over it, as intended by a budget board county,
I
and that's
think there
what it
was
should
a
be.
vote by the BOCC, the people that actually are responsible statutorily and constitutionally about the size of the jail. It was a public vote. I mean, we could roll those minutes back for you and we can get a copy of those for you.
What
That
was the size of
1800.
it then?
That was
Wow.
1,800.
And are we gonna, I heard in front of your engineer the other day that it's 400 to 500 beds is what the, I
Actually, what he
asked him what
said
we have money
600.
for.
He
600.
said 600, and that's what we have money for. And that's why we're having to do everything that we possibly can, scrape up every penny that we possibly can and put it and assure the people that we're doing everything we can. But
I don't see, I
let's
mean, in an
continue to
imaginary world, maybe you can raise another 300-400 million. I don't know where you're gonna raise it at. But I personally don't think we need to send this money over there right now until you actually have a plan where the money's coming from. I don't start projects unless I know exactly what banks and what money's coming from. We're starting a project telling the public, back to you, that we're gonna build it for 230, 260 million, whatever that number was. That was never a possible number.
That's a good try. It wasn't me that actually sent that to the people,
So
so.
you weren't here.
try
That's
again.
true. I take that back. You weren't elected at that time.
Okay, well, to the point of both of you gentlemen, we don't have the money to do these things. We are struggling financially. This is the smallest reserve fund in history. I get that we're funding up front, but we've also been passing the hat for the past couple of years. So it's a matter of that it just, whether we pay up front or pay on the back end, we are short on money, and we just don't have the discretionary to do this as much as I think we'd all like to do it. We have to fix that HVAC. The current facility is going to have to work until it's not the facility. I appreciate the sheriff's commitment about it. It was likewise my commitment about it, and I'm just aiming at you. I know you're the messenger, but we have to, it has to work. I mean, he's on the trust now, and I guarantee you, doesn't want to be on a trust of a jail who has no functional HVAC. I guarantee it, he doesn't. He wants this vote to be a no vote because of his commitment for the jail. And none of us on this board, I feel certain, can speak to or any shrinking violets about the commitment to the jail. But we have to have a functional HVAC now. We have to have these courtrooms. The Supreme Court has handed them down. We don't have a choice. It's going to be an unfunded mandate, and we're going to have to pay for an election, whatever the cost is, and hopefully it's less, but we're going to have to pay. Those are just non-negotiables.
Commissioner, on the HVAC, and that it's listed on this sheet, so I just want to make sure that everybody's clear. The HVAC's already funded. So that project down at the jail is going to be completed.
But it's a reimbursement.
This is a reimbursement because we were going to use the money that we're paying for the HVAC. We were going to use that to help pay for the behavioral health center and the new jail.
Right.
So those monies aren't available for that, but the HVAC will get done. I just want to make sure that, because it is on this sheet, I just want to make sure that that was clear.
And we pulled out of the new jail fund for the HVAC, which we
Yes.
really shouldn't have done. I mean, and so that's really a lot where this came from, is because we probably shouldn't have pulled it out of the new jail fund. We had the ability to do other things, but
Yeah,
this is kind of a correction.
You've
of
explained
that.
it better than I did, and I apologize for mucking it up, but it's got to be paid back.
So,
Right, yeah,
one of
so
the
go back
questions
to
we
the
have
jail.
is, what's the feasibility of splitting the vote for the one-time money?
You're free to make any motion you like.
Okay.
Well, our BET representative to speak to that if we think that's appropriate.
And I think, go ahead, Cody.
Well, are we still on the recommendation or are we on the action item? Excuse me.
On the recommendation.
When we get to 38, I'm willing to move the adoption of the BET recommendation with the following changes. That the ARPA's interest in the amount of $4 million and the capital project's new jail item in the amount of $4,092,110.32 be placed in the reserve. So that, once we get to the actionable item, I'll make that motion.
We go ahead and accept
And the
the
juvenile
update for
courtrooms.
37.
That, the motion that I have, Mr. Warren, would fund the juvenile courtrooms. It would repay the HVAC dollars. And so of that one-time money that we're talking about, you all have been talking about, it would take the ARPA interest and the capital projects new line item, that one-time money and $8 million and put into the reserve so you got answers on some of your questions.
So
That's it.
so we need to move off 37.
Well, you can second your motion that you just made.
Thank you.
I make a motion to receive 37.
Well, we've got
There's already a
multiple
Sorry,
motions
motion,
here.
good. Second, whatever I can do.
Mine wasn't a motion on this item. I was just saying what I was prepared to.
We're trying to resolve 37 first.
All right. What's the motion on item 37?
To accept.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Okay, with regard to item 38, I would move that we would adopt the BET recommendation with the following changes. That the ARPA, these are related to the one-time money, that the ARPA interest in the amount of $4 million and the capital project's new jail in the amount of $4,092,110.32 be placed into the reserve.
Second.
Are we adopting, what about the juvenile? Is that?
Yeah, that is part of that would be funded under my motion.
Okay.
State it again for me, please.
That we adopt the BET recommendations with the following changes. The ARPA interest in the amount of $4 million and the capital project's new jail in the amount of $4,092,110.32 be placed in the reserve.
So the 5 would still go into the new jail bucket.
But this motion would go ahead and
Correct.
fund all their other recommendations.
Correct.
And you didn't want more time to delve into that?
Me?
This is where you get debate or discussion.
More. No, I think that's a compromise. And again, I appreciate the conversations. I still have concern about the potential costs that will come with the changes. So I would like to have maybe a special budget board meeting if we need it, where the jail comes in, they give us an overview, the planning committee, whoever comes in and gives us a presentation of what the layout's going to look like. I mean, there are plans out there, and I think it would be appropriate for us to all see them. Because as much as I do try in my car to listen to different meetings as I'm driving, I don't watch every single meeting that goes on here. And so it is helpful. So I do really, really want to encourage that. I have a great concern with continuing to push money out to the jail and not have the ability to have these public conversations. And I think honestly, we all just want to do what's best here. So I have no further comment or discussion.
I again don't think we can afford this, and this is shrinking us up way too much. But is there any others to discuss? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. No. Passes 5-3. Item 39. Madam Clerk,
Defer.
till the next meeting.
Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Cody?
Good almost afternoon.
I think we're there.
All right, item 40 is a transfer from the reserve account in the amount of $2,000. We go into general government. This is a line item that the DA's office utilizes to pay for expenses related to removal of cases from state court to federal court. We put an infusion in a couple years ago of this amount. It usually lasts quite a while. It's dwindled down, and they need some more to do some filings that they need, pretty quick. And then we wanted to make sure that there was a little bit of a balance in there in case they needed it again.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, Larry made a motion, second.
All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Again with the assessor.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
this one was one that I mentioned earlier on the watch list, just like the previous one. This is a recommendation to transfer an amount of $67,000 from reserve, with $57,000 going into the assessor's general fund budget and $10,000 going into general government. That is to pay for the increased expenses related to ESRI, which is our GIS program, some training that's associated with that, as well as some cloud hosting. General government picks up some of those bills for countywide operations, and the assessor picks up some. That's why there's the split here.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, 42 is a recommendation to transfer from reserve into MIS an amount of $259,791. This encompasses a few things. First of all, exactly $87,582. Last year, the sheriff's office said that their Microsoft 365 that they had been previously funded for, that they were willing to turn that over to MIS to manage that. So when we adopted the budget for July 1, that $87,582 was taken out of the sheriff's budget, but it wasn't added to MIS. So it was not funded. So we're recommending going ahead and getting that into MIS so they can pay for something that was previously budgeted in another budget and surrendered, but not budgeted again. We have an amount in the $70,000 range for Axon that is for some subscription for, I believe it's evidence software that the DA's office uses for a short period of time. The DA's office was using this company and they had a free trial. Well, that free trial expired the end of last calendar year. So the DA's office wanted to continue on with that, but we were going to have to pay for it because we were out of the free trial period. So Budget Board made the decision to fund the remaining portion of that year for the Axon, which was 6 months. But when we did the flat budget, we didn't true up the annual cost for that. So now we got to fund that this year for 12 months instead of 6 months. So that's part of the $259,000. And then there's $90,000. The remaining portion of it is for other software expenses, licensing that we have that the county utilizes through the MIS department that have increased for this next fiscal year. So this is to true up MIS in those the known M&O cost increases.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Finally, court services.
Yeah, I mentioned this one earlier when we did the budget effective July 1, based upon the policy change that was enacted, that we automatically deducted the employer premiums from those general fund budgets. Court services, it was just something that slipped through since we changed from having a department to having contracts. This amount was originally in the estimate of needs for court services. They were requesting $280,044 in employer premium expenses. And so July 1, those dollars were automatically taken out of the budget. There's not any employer premiums needed in that since we're funding it via a contract. So our recommendation is while that money is sitting down in the employee benefits supplement account, it can still be transferred. So we're recommending just to move that from there back up to that court services M&O line item.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Any citizens to speak before the budget board? Board comments? Anyone?
I do have one thing. On item number 36, what was attached on the agenda, we revised with the handouts you have now. So,
Thank you.
oh, 37, sorry, 37.
So we need to receive the attachment. Is there a motion to do so on item 37? I'll move it. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any board comments? This is my last meeting until I'm able to return after the surgery, so any matters that go to the chair's office, if it's for budget board stuff, be sure to go to the treasurer as the vice chair of the budget board, and for BOCC stuff to District 3. Any new business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.